Well, thank you very much. Again, I wish I could be there. It's an honor to be here. Would have loved to have come in and been there in person. We actually have a big announcement today for those of you that are Twitch fans. It'll come out soon, and I need to be here so that I could go and stream. And so I'm doing this 6 a.m. stream, so to say, and then I'll be live streaming. I think at let's see, I guess it's 10:30 my time or 12:30 your time, talking to a bunch of our streamers about the change we made. So that's why I couldn't make it. But lots of great memories of being a Jesuit. I would have loved to have come by. And in fact, I think in this very auditorium, I had lots of good memories, which I'll get to in a moment. But I'm going to start with a story because, of course, my job is to somehow keep you entertained for like 40-ish minutes. I'm going to be keeping my eye on you to see who falls asleep. I will share a little story of my own experience. I spent a lot of great years at Jesuit, and then I went off to school. I went to Duke. I will say I was in many of these rooms with a bunch of people. In fact, when I was at Duke, I was a computer science major. And in my first computer science class, I had this bad habit, and I'm sure none of y'all have this habit. I had this bad habit where I would fall asleep in class. And I got very good, I thought, about falling asleep in the back so that my professor didn't notice it. Turns out he did notice it. In fact, he used to tease me because I did well in the class. So he still was kind of okay with it. And I would run into him years later through Duke, and he used to joke and said that, once that I asked a question and I fell asleep before he answered the question, which I don't think is true. But I did well in the computer science class, which I'll get to in a second. And so I'm going to try to be interesting, of course, looking forward to any questions you have. And I'm going to start with another story. And this story was about my time at Jesuit. And so I came into Jesuit, and of course, I really didn't know who I was. I suspect most of y'all are in the same camp. You think you think you know who you are. You think you know what you're going to do. You feel good about yourself. But the reality is, when you're just starting out, you're just trying to not just figure out what you're going to do, but who you are, what you want to do. There's so many choices. Of course, a big part of your life is your friends. And how you're going to meet friends and how you're going to socially interact there. And I played a lot of basketball. I was fairly active in ball sports before getting to Jesuit, and I had this dream of playing basketball at Jesuit. So my freshman year, I ended up trying out for football and enjoyed football. I think I was a defensive tight end, but for whatever reason, that year was the one year, or I missed it, maybe because I fell asleep or something, where they had the announcement that those people who played freshman football, I never heard the announcement when I could go and try out for freshman basketball, because the freshman basketball tryout was during the football season. So I didn't try out for basketball. And interestingly, I never asked. I was waiting to hear the announcement. I didn't hear the announcement. I didn't go up to anyone and say, excuse me, I want to try out for basketball. I'm playing football. What should I do? Because I was just kind of timid or shy or whatnot. So I didn't play freshman basketball because I didn't try out. So my sophomore year, I was planning on trying out for basketball. I practiced all summer. I had been to the coaches camp and was feeling good about it. Tried out for basketball, didn't make it. Okay. Now I played a lot of basketball in my life. In fact, many people I played with have all played high school and college ball. But I was devastated because that was a big part of my identity. I was planning on being on the basketball team, and that was sort of what I was going to do, because I decided I didn't want to play football. And then when I didn't make it, I was just kind of walking around all bummed, not sure what I was going to do. And my brother, who was really into theater, and he was a year older than me, went to Jesuit. He had tried out for, been doing plays since he got to Jesuit. He says, well, Dan, why don't you come and try out for this play? This play actually didn't end up being at Jesuit. It was at Mount Carmel. So why don't you try it out? I'll give you something to do. And I went ahead and tried out, and I got a part in the play, and I did that play, and I had a great time. And And then I proceeded for every semester from there till second semester junior year to be in plays. I was president of the Philhellectic Society of Jesuit, so I suspect it's in this very same auditorium. I worked on the sets, but I performed, I'd sing, I'd do all sorts of stuff. Um, and that really became my identity. It became who I was. Now, I never thought of myself, that wasn't what I wanted to do in high school. But this one door that I was expecting to do got closed on me. Okay. And another door opened. Okay. And I walked through that door. And for a big part of my life, theater was a central part of what I did and who was my life. And a few things that I learned from this that I think is important for you guys to learn. First of all, overcoming disappointment. I expect many of you have had a great deal of success in your upbringing. I also would put money on the fact that many of you parents probably have done a great deal for you and often have tried to make sure you succeed. If I was sitting there right now, I'd get, everyone to raise their hand and say, how many of you feel like you're a success in life, feel good about what you're doing? And the one thing that I didn't realize till years later is one of the most important things in We Develop is overcoming disappointment and dealing with the sorrow, the frustration, the sadness. And in fact, many people today, many parents, I did this as a parent. When my son got cut from the travel baseball team, I wanted to find a way where he wouldn't be hurt and bummed out about it. I wanted to find a way where he didn't have to deal with that pain. And that was me being a crappy parent, because in fact, the best thing to do is to get cut from a sports team and to feel sad, because you know what? You're just fine if you get cut from a sports team. And one of the biggest challenges that kids have today is actually they don't fail enough. They don't take enough risks. Okay? So some of the best advice that I once heard from someone was they said, this is how they raised their kid. Every day their kid came home and they said, how did you fail today? And then whatever they expected their kid to talk about something they did where they were disappointed, where they didn't succeed in what they were trying to do. So this is one thing that I encourage all of you to do. Think about, how did I fail today? What did I do that didn't work out? And if the answer is I didn't fail today, then it's probably the case you're not trying enough things. Because I think the biggest thing in life is to try new things. And we're here to talk about your career. And a huge part of your career is to take chances, is to go for a job you're not sure that you can get. It's to think you might want to do something that you don't know that you have the talent for. Okay. The other thing that I learned from that is the idea that new doors open all the time. The key is you have to be ready to walk through them. So often we think things are planned out and this is what I'm going to be. I know where I want to go to this college. I want to go and be this. And that's so central to us. And doors close on us all the time, but whenever a door opens, another one opens. And so for me, the biggest thing is putting yourself in a position so that a new opportunity can follow you. A new opportunity can present itself. So now I'm going to go ahead and talk some about my story. Okay. And now one of the tricky things when I talk about my story is so often we focus on what I have done as opposed to who am I? If I interview someone for a job, I traditionally ask them, tell me who you are. I don't want to know what have they done. And I suspect all of you, you're all sitting here in your career. And one of the things that I'm going to say is, of course, this is about a career day. You can think about what is your career going to be. And so much of the focus is about what are you going to do? But I think the biggest question you have to ask is, who are you going to be? Because in today's world, it's very different than the world, even when I grew up, but if you go 20 years before that, where you sort of picked one thing to do, and that's what you did your whole life. Certainly, some of you may do that. Some of you may become a doctor, and once you go to med school for 8 years and all that, you tend to keep being a doctor. But for so many of you, you won't figure out what you're going to do today or tomorrow or the next day, or when you're a freshman in college, or when you're a junior in college, or when you're a senior in college, because today's world changes so fast. And for many of your careers, you'll start out doing one thing and then you'll end up doing another. So as you know, I'm the CEO of Twitch. And one of the things I love doing is hanging out and spending time with our streamers. Okay. So now I will try to get you to raise your hand just so that way I make sure I can figure out which ones of you may be asleep. How many of you use social media? There you go. Just a few of you, right? And I somewhere in this crowd, I am 100% certain one of you is going to have a career in social media. I don't know if it's going to be through TikTok. I don't know if it's going to be on Instagram. I don't know if it's going to be on Twitch. I don't know if it's going to be on YouTube. But with the number of people sitting in here, you're going to have a career in social media. Now, of course, your teachers are like, what? No, 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 that's not what Career Day is about. Okay. But yeah, you're going to end up living your life and funding your life by creating silly videos. Okay. And that's one thing I've really enjoyed as I meet with Twitch streamers. I meet these people who went to Columbia, they went to Yale, they went to Cornell, they were in finance, they got a degree in computer science, and then they started streaming. Okay. And they talk about, some of them started streaming gaming, some of them started streaming doing other stuff where they were just videotaping themselves in the real life. And they have to talk about the journey they had with their parents, because at first the parents are like, huh, what? You just graduated from Cornell and you're going to do what with your life? But they use all of the stuff that they learned when they were in a high school like Jesuit, when they were in college at Cornell, because actually you think that being social media, career in social media is just kind of goofing around on the camera. It's not. It's a lot of work to figure out how to grow your audience. It's a lot of work to figure out how to create content regularly. Once you start succeeding, it's a lot of work to have people that work for you that then you're paying their bills. Most of those social media stars have a whole team of people, and that team of people depend upon the social media stars to pay them. And so now suddenly you're actually a CEO like myself. You're a CEO of your own company. Okay. And the most important thing in doing that is, what skills do you have? What have you learned to do? How are you at overcoming disappointment? How are you at learning new things? Okay. The most important thing you're figuring out as you go through class is not necessarily remembering what battle was decisive in World War II. Okay. Most important thing you're doing is figuring out how to organize concepts, how to think critically, how to deal with people. A big part of my career life has been my ability to deal with people, and my ability to deal with people and deal with complex situations. You guys are learning that both in the classroom and in the schoolyard, because a huge part of being successful isn't just intellectual intelligence, it's emotional intelligence. It's being able to interact, it's being able to achieve things. So now I'm going to go ahead and weave in another story. And this is about who you're going to be. And we started out with a prayer, okay? And praying is, of course, for some of you, you are religious. Some of you, you're going to Jesuit and you're not religious, and that's okay. But all of you need to think about who you are as a friend, as a worker, as a parent. Are you someone that someone can trust in? There's someone that your friend can believe in? And how do you look at other people? How do you act towards the person next to you? One of the things I always remember, a story I often tell, was I still play basketball. I still play intramural football and intramural basketball. And at one point, one of the guys who was on the football team, who was pretty popular in school, we played basketball, and I played well in his team. And he says, because I was one of the guys who I was kind of a tweener in terms of socially at the school. I wasn't one of the cool kids, but nobody picked on me because I was pretty big. And then at some point he said to me, Dan, you're a good basketball player. He said, Dan, wow, you're okay. You're a good basketball player. And once he realized that I was a good basketball player, he actually treated me differently, which I always found was kind of funny. And he actually even said it to me out loud. Where he said, wow, you're okay. You're a good basketball player. And of course, that's silly. the idea that he was going to treat me differently because I was a good basketball player. Um, but that's what kids do in high school. I'm sure some of y'all do that, okay? But think of who you are because it matters. And it's going to matter in the career you choose, okay? Now, the third part I want to go to is this idea of our self-image of ourself and the boxes that we put ourselves in, okay? Um, and I'm going to start first. I didn't talk much about my career choices. So let me talk about my career choices for a second. And then I'm going to come into this idea, the stories we tell ourselves. So as it was mentioned at the beginning, so I went to Duke. A little story. I'll tell the story of when I decided to go to Duke, and some of y'all might enjoy this. I was trying to choose between Duke and Notre Dame. At the time, not that many kids from Jesuit actually left. I suspect now it's different, but I suspect it's even now. It was probably about 10 of the students from my class left the Louisiana, kind of Texas, Alabama area for school at that point. I suspect it's a lot more now. But I was choosing, and I was going to be going away. And I was trying to choose between Duke and Notre Dame. One day I woke up, I went downstairs, I told my mom, I've decided I'm going to Duke, walked out the door. Now, I was a good Catholic boy growing up and Irish Catholic. And my mom broke down crying. Didn't know this till years later because her dream was her son would go to Notre Dame because good Irish Catholic. And then I decided to go to Duke. My brother walked downstairs, who also went to Jesuit. And my brother said, Mom, that's okay. I'll go to Notre Dame. About 8 years later, he also went to Duke. But by then, my parents were very excited about him going to Duke. And at Duke, I was a computer science major and a theater major. And I went there planning on majoring in theater and math. I took my first computer science class. I did well. I was like, oh, this is easy. I'll be a computer science major. At the time, I had no idea computers were going to be what they are today. Okay. Graduated, got a job using my computer degree. Eventually decided to go get my PhD in computer science. At the time, I didn't realize this was going to be a great way to make money. I kind of did it because I was going to be pure and get my PhD. And I thought that was like this, more academic route. Got out, and by then computers are starting to become pretty integral to things we did. To give you a sense of how long ago this was, when I took my first class in computer science, we programmed the computer with cards, where you had a stack of cards, you'd put them in a machine, it would rifle through, and then you'd come out with your program. So at that point, computers were very different. But after getting my PhD, I went off and I worked for NASA, where I ran all their computer science research, and my PhD was in AI. At the time, I didn't realize AI was going to be the next big thing. Many of the choices that I made, I made choices about what I wanted to do at the time. When I went to get my PhD, I chose to go to Texas. It was a good school, but I wanted to live in Austin. When I graduated, I went to NASA in California because I wanted to live in the Bay Area. Most of my career, I lived in the Bay Area. Did well at NASA. Then I decided to go work for Google. Google was getting kind of big then. As at YouTube, I ran product and engineering at YouTube for part of my time at Google. Ran a team in research, did a bunch of different things. Then I went, as I mentioned, this startup next door. And then I ended up at Twitch about 4 years ago. And I went to Twitch. Originally, they offered me the job and I didn't take it because I'm not a gamer. I expect many of you are gamers and think, wow, working at Twitch, it's pretty cool. And I was thinking, doesn't make sense. I'm not a gamer. I should there's probably someone else that's a better person for the job. And it just didn't seem right. I decided to take it eventually. And I didn't, interestingly, I said no at first. The CEO came back 3 months later and I said, Dan, I really think you're the right person for the job. Are you interested now? And I went ahead and said yes. And I said yes because I realized in my life, when I was happiest, it's because I was working with people that I liked working with. And while I wasn't a Twitch user, I liked the people I was going to work with. So I said, what the heck? And it was very, my wife would say that the universe, the stars aligned in terms of me getting the job at Twitch and getting that, because now I love my role as CEO, and I get to spend a lot of time with streamers. And one thing I do a lot is I actually stream on Twitch. I play the piano and sing. And the interesting thing is, it's kind of brought full circle this thing I did in high school when I was in theater. I was performing. That's kind of who I was when I was in high school. But my professional life, none of that has come out. I didn't go out and sing in public or anything like that. I play the piano and sing at home. I didn't perform in any way. But now, 2 to 3 times a week, I go on Twitch and I stream and I perform. I go on streamers' channels and I perform with them. And what Twitch really is about, it's kind of live improvisational theater. Often you might watch someone who's gaming, but what they're really doing is talking. And they have to be interesting if you're going to watch them. Otherwise, you don't watch them. And so Twitch has always been a talk platform where people happen to game while they talk. And what I realized was this is sort of like this perfect combination of my technical background and my technical career that I developed, but with my creative, the creative part of who I am. And this gets to my last point, which is that there are all these boxes that we put ourselves in, and this self-image that we tell ourselves about who we are, and other people put us in these boxes as well. Throughout my career, people would look at me and then say, oh, you're a tech guy. You're a tech guy, okay? And this comes back to this question about who you want to be and this question of who are you? The reality is I do happen to have good technical skills. I'm strong in computers. I can think logically about things. I can figure out algorithms really well. But that isn't all I am. When I was sitting here at Jesuit, interestingly, so I was really good at math in high school. I had a brother who was a year older than me. We did everything together. He wasn't as good as me in math. He was still fine in math, but he wasn't as good as me. But he leaned more into English. So I had this model of myself as being good in math and not good in English. That's how I thought of myself. Now, part of that is because my parents would keep telling us that story. In part, since I was really good in math, my brother had this image of he was not good in math. Now, he actually was pretty good in math. He got B pluses, but since I was like one of the top in the class, his model of himself, he wasn't good in math. My model of myself was I wasn't a good writer. So for years, I thought of myself, yeah, I'm not really a writer. That's just not what I do. And it was probably, I would work to write and it'd be work. It was probably 15 years later that I eventually, 20 years later, I realized I'm actually a really good writer. And now I write all the time for my job. I write email letters to the company. I write just stuff right and left. But the model I told myself was I wasn't a writer. And part of that was because that was the story my parents told me. And that's the story I heard from teachers at Jesuit. And it wasn't because I wasn't a good writer. It was because I was really good in math. And so it was comparative. I thought of myself comparable to how I was. So all of you probably have this models of what are you good in? Some of you are going to think I'm really good in math. Some of you are going to go, oh, I suck in math. The reality is if you're sitting in this room, you're probably pretty good at math. You're probably pretty good at writing. You're probably pretty good at a lot of different things. And one of the things you have to think about is the boxes that you put yourself in and the stories you tell yourself and the stories that other people, because other people will put you in boxes. They'll say you're this, you're that, you're not this, you're not that. And often the boxes that people put you in will limit you because you'll think, oh, I can't do that. I'm not that. And one of the things I've learned in my career is when I've learned the most, it is when I've taken a risk and done something completely different. I was a manager at NASA. I was managing 700 people. I was like the number 2 person. And I left to go work at Google. And next thing you know, I was managing 20 engineers, all of them reporting directly to me. And it had been years since I had managed an engineer that was writing code. And I had to learn a lot in doing that. And then I'd jump around at Google into different roles. And then I went from having a huge team at Google at YouTube to a startup where once again I had 20 people working for me. And I learned a lot from those things. And what you do is you learn a lot when you stick yourself in a position where you're uncomfortable. This goes back to this question of failing. If you aren't uncomfortable, you're not pushing yourself hard enough to try new things. Do things that you're uncomfortable. That's when you're going to learn the most. Okay. And be aware that you have all sorts of abilities that you don't think you have. There are all sorts of stories that you tell yourself that of what you can do and what you can't do. Okay. And the most important thing as you choose your career and figure out what to do is not focusing just on what you're going to do, but thinking about who you're going to be, what are you learning, because your career is going to change. The most important thing for success in your career is your ability to change with all those challenges that have presented themselves. All right, so now I've bored you by rambling on and on for 30 minutes. I see that the teachers are the father there, making sure none of y'all are falling asleep, which I'm glad. Maybe they have a little shocker there. Usually it's a little better if I'm not sitting on a screen. So now I think we're ready to go to questions. And now I've gone on and on, you know, lessons, this and that. But now you can ask me whatever question you want. It doesn't have to be about Career Day. It can be about Twitch. I didn't go on and on about Twitch because I figured y'all would be asking questions. That's really the fun part of my job. And I really love doing it.
All right, guys,
so
listen
now
up.
Who's going?
All right, here's how we're going to do it. If you would like, I'm sure you've been thinking of possible questions to ask. So if you have a good, intelligent question you'd like to ask Mr. Clancy, you're going to get up in the aisle, see where Father Kramer is. You're going to let him know what your question is. Then you're going to walk up to where Mr. Homer is at the microphone, and then you're going to be looking right into that monitor, and you're going to be able to ask your question. Men, quiet down.
And I will say, you know, if we're doing this like I do with Twitch, y'all would be sitting in chat right now asking your questions, and then you wouldn't be forced to ask a good or intelligent question. You can ask whatever question you wanted to, but I guess we've got a standard here, good and intelligent questions.
All right. So we're ready. If you'd like to ask a question, come forward. The rest of you, men, let's stay quiet. Guys, let's stay quiet while we're asking questions. Line up. We have a bit of time, so we ought to be able to get quite a few of them in.
I recently started streaming on Twitch, and I just wanted to know if you had any tips for me.
I do have tips for you. So one, make sure you're having fun. Okay. Number two, get a schedule. Okay. The most important thing in building a community on Twitch is that you stream regularly and at the same time. So figure out, okay, I'm going to stream Tuesday and Thursday night, okay, and Saturday, okay? Don't have it jump all over the place, okay? Because whenever somebody finds you, then they're going to come back and find you again. But usually their schedule needs to sync with your schedule. So pick a schedule, do it regularly. The magic of Twitch is the community that you build, okay? Number two, I would say a lot of the ways you're going to find people to watch you is through the communities that you watch on Twitch. And the way you're going to figure out what to do is because you see other people doing it. Okay. So go ahead and watch other people. And don't just watch the big streamers. Because in fact, the best way to get other people to watch you is because you're watching them. And then, in fact, if you're a member of another community and then you say, yeah, I'm streaming, the folks, so find people that have 20, 30, 40 average people watching them. Okay. Some of those people will come and check you out and spend time in chat, say stuff in chat. Don't sit there and be quiet, right? Watch, say stuff in chat, tell them I'm streaming. And the biggest way for getting people to watch you, okay, is through collaboration. Okay, one of the features we just built, which I'll be happy to answer later on about, called Stream Together, is designed to make it so you can stream with other people. Okay, one of the hard parts about streaming is you're sitting there by yourself, right? and you're talking into a camera. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm talking into a camera. The difference is I at least have a picture of you and you're nodding your head as I speak. So then I feel like, oh, he understands what I'm saying. When you're streaming, you're sitting in that camera staring at it. People are watching you. You have no idea. Use this feature we built stream together. Find somebody else at Jesuit there. Turn around and say, anyone want to stream with me? Okay. And have somebody there that streams with you and hangs out with you because it's easy to just hang out. You don't have to just game. I do a lot of what's called IRL streaming where I go around and just do stuff in the world. Okay. So collaborate with other people. That's often the way you're going to find an audience. And I'll offer now, you can go ahead and friend me on Discord. I assume you use Discord if you stream on Twitch.
Yeah.
DJ Clancy 999, DJ Clancy 999, and I'll go ahead and come on your stream sometime. And we can talk about what you're trying to do when you're streaming. Okay, so better to do this on your stream. Okay. And make sure everyone here at Jesuit knows when you're streaming, when you're going to come on. So we'll stream together and everyone at Jesuit can watch.
Do you know Aiden Ross?
I do know Aiden Ross.
Are y'all friends?
I wouldn't say I'm friends with Aiden. I'm friends with a lot of streamers. As for those of you who do know Aiden, Aiden is a bit caustic at times, a bit controversial, a bit, and that may be why you watch him. As you may know, he's not streaming on Twitch anymore because he would do a lot of stuff that we decided we didn't need on Twitch. And so friends with a lot of different streamers. I haven't spent really much time with Aiden, but I'm kind of fine with what he wants to do, right? Because that's what he wants to do, and he's going to find the platform that's right for him.
Thank you.
I was wondering, how do you get affiliated on Twitch?
Yeah, so to become an affiliate on Twitch, you have to, the exact criteria, I think you have to get 3 average concurrent viewers. There's a certain number of days you have to stream. And then you have to have at least a modicum of an audience. It's not that much. It's like 3, like you can probably get it if you just get your friends to watch you. Okay. But the biggest thing is you need to show that you're streaming regularly. So I can search to get the exact number of days. It's public. I don't remember because interestingly, for most folks I talk to, they don't ask for that. They ask more about getting partner. But if you search, you say, how long do I have to stream? It takes about a month or so. But the biggest thing is you have to have an audience of just like 2 to 3 people on average. Okay. To show that. And the reason we have a limit like that, and for those that don't know, when you're an affiliate, that means you can start making money from Twitch. And the reason we have a barrier before you can start making money is to stop fraud. So it usually takes about a month of streaming regularly. And if you get your friends to watch you, then usually you'll be fine.
All right, thank you.
Did you ever think about changing your major like in college, or did you like ever since you were in high school just kind of knew what you wanted to do and stuck with it?
I had no idea what I was going to do when I went to college. As I said, I did change it. I went in thinking I was going to major in math. I was interested in theater. I ended up deciding to do in computers. This idea that you need to know what you're going to do when you're 17 is kind of silly. You hardly know who you are. So yes, lots of folks change their major because you're trying to figure out what you like to do. And I'd say one of the biggest things I'd say is, and I didn't work this in my speech, but I should have. If you like what you're doing, you're going to work hard. And if you work hard, you're going to get better. Because the more time you spend at something, the better you get. For folks that they ask me, what should I do when I graduate? Their computer degree. And I say, if you enjoy programming, get a job programming. And it's fine to work 50 or 60 hours a week because that means you're getting better as a programmer. You can't work 50 to 60 hours a week if you don't like what you're doing. So if you don't like the classes you're in college, find some other classes. Because if you don't like what you're doing, you're not going to work hard. If you don't work hard, you're not going to succeed.
Thank you.
How do you come up with ideas to improve Twitch?
Ah, great question. Um, so many of the ideas come from interacting and talking with streamers and other people. One of the things I often say is most ideas are bad, and that includes my ideas. And so I come up with a lot of ideas to improve Twitch. Many of them are bad. The biggest skill that I've learned is figuring out how to figure out which ones are my bad ideas quickly, and then to help figure out what are the good ideas. And ideas are cheap. Many people, they say, they look at a startup and they say, oh, I had that idea. Ideas are a dime a dozen. So mostly what I do is I spend time both with other people at Twitch that I work with and other streamers. And I spitball the ideas and I throw up there on the wall and I see which one sticks and I see which one. Usually I'll be percolating an idea for months before I end up pushing it. And many of the ideas, not many, most of the ideas of the stuff we do comes from other people at Twitch because it's all about interacting with people and talking and trying to take the nugget of an idea and go from a mediocre idea to a good idea.
All right, thank you.
Have you ever met one of the big streamers like Ninja or Casey?
I have met. I had dinner with Ninja, so I'll take that and I'll ask a question. I will share not just Ninja. So I had dinner with Ninja in Florida. I know almost all the big streamers. XQC, I like him a lot, but probably the streamer I had the most fun meeting with. I did a tour around the Southeast because I wanted to meet with streamers. So I flew into Tampa. I rented a Sprinter van. And I basically did a loop around the Southeast, going up to Nashville, meeting with streamers. That's when I actually had dinner with Ninja and his wife. I had dinner with Nick Merckx. But maybe the highlight of the trip was I went by T-Pain's house. Because for those of you who don't know, T-Pain is a streamer. And T-Pain heard I was going around and said, oh, I want him to come by. And so I went by T-Pain's house, went up. It's in outside of Atlanta, buzzed, the gate opened, went in there. There was one car there, went up, knocked on the door. Nobody answered. I was like, this is strange. Nobody answered. Ring the doorbell. There was a dog. And I looked and there was a Kia, a Kia was the only car. And then I was like, I wonder if this is the right house. I walked out and looked at the address and it was one house over. Google had sent me in the wrong place. I then get out, go around. I go to T-Pain's house. And he has cars galore. There are like 5 people there because he also likes to race. He's got like 3 race cars. So initially I thought it was kind of funny that, T-Pain would be driving a Kia, and I was right because he doesn't drive a Kia. He has all sorts of other cars, but it was great hanging out with him. I actually chat with him on Discord all the time and stream with him some, and that's been a lot of fun.
Thank you. Who would you say is your favorite streamer to watch?
So it's kind of like asking me which of my kids is my favorite kid, and so my kids tried me to get asked the question all the time when they were young. Come on, Dad, tell me which one is favorite. No, really, just tell me which one is favorite. So I've gotten good about not answering that question. But part of this too is because I'm an unusual Twitch viewer. As opposed to watching one streamer, I peruse and look at a bunch of streamers. So I love watching, since I do music, there are a bunch of music streamers I watch. But then I'll also spend time on the big streamers. And I love hanging out with them. So it's probably the ones that like T-Pain I'll watch because then I'll go on his stream, right? Will Neff I've gone on his stream a few times. In fact, some of my most fun streaming was we would just start hanging out and start talking. Like there was one where it was Will Neff and T-Pain and S-Von TV, and we were just hanging out, chatting, and that was a blast. But so I don't have one. I kind of watch a bunch.
All right, thank you. How tiring is it to be a CEO out of 10?
It's interesting. I don't think it's that tiring. I find it's energizing. In fact, my wife, she'll ask, well, Dan, when are you going to retire? You're going to retire in a couple of years, right? And I'm like, for her, I say, oh yeah. But the reality is, I have a blast with what I'm doing. So I have no idea when I'll retire. It's work. The key thing that you'll learn, and this is the difference, is being CEO versus being CEO is lonely. Because when I was in a team, someone else ultimately is above me that has responsibility. And the challenge is, as CEO, I don't make every decision that Twitch makes, but at some level, I'm responsible for every decision. And I feel a great deal of responsibility because there are millions of people who stream that depend upon the decisions I make. So it's a fairly weighty role, but it's a fun role.
Hello. How does AI affect the algorithms on social media platforms?
Oh, great question. Um, and not only how does it do it, how does it screw it up? I'll talk about that too. That in fact, nobody's talked about AI, but it's a good thing. Everyone's talking about how AI and it's going to take over the world. Let me tell you, AI is not taking over the world. We're not going to have Skynet. That ain't going to happen. Okay. There'll be things that happen with AI, but the biggest thing that AI does in social media platforms is figuring out what to show you at any point in time. And of course, that was the biggest thing that TikTok did. TikTok was able to figure out how to give you an interesting feed. So you just sit there and swipe and swipe and swipe. And it's AI like all over the place to figure out what should I show you next. We use it for recommendations on ours. AI now is a tool that's used all over the place. And it's a cool technology to go into. So I'm glad I got my PhD in it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Who's the favorite person that you've streamed with?
I'd say it's T-Pain. That's the one that I've had the most fun streaming with because you may not know this, but he mixes all his own music. He actually on one stream he said, "Dan, we're hanging out. I'm going to premiere my new video that I just finished at 4 a.m." I was like, "You do your own editing for your music video?" He says, "Yeah, I do my own editing." And he was releasing it on Friday, a video he was releasing with Snoop Dogg that he played it for the first time on our stream because he had just finished editing it the night before.
Okay, thank you.
How many competitors does Twitch have?
It's interesting. I don't think we have many at all, or any. I think we're pretty unique. Kick is a platform that is similar to Twitch, but it's a tiny platform. It's not something I worry about that much. There are lots of platforms that do live streaming. YouTube does live streaming, Instagram does live streaming, TikTok does live streaming. The live streaming on Twitch is different because that's all we do. And people, when they watch Twitch, they pull up a chair for an hour. Some of y'all might watch a live stream on TikTok. I challenge anyone to watch a live stream for an hour on TikTok. You're going to swipe if you're watching on TikTok. Same thing on YouTube. So I think we're in a position where we're pretty unique. And that's why I focus our energies as a company, not on what other folks do, but on what we do.
How to use your faith or skills you learned at Jesuit to navigate all the controversies you hear about with Twitch?
Yeah. Faith, of course, you start in faith, your religious faith, but a big part of faith in your religion is about figuring out who you are. And that's a big part of faith. And a big part of faith is how you treat other people. So how I treat other people has been integral to my success as a leader. That's what makes me a good leader, is how I treat other people. And then that is the foundation of my success, is my ability to think about what motivates other people and to motivate them. And that's a huge part of what you learn when you're in school.
Thank you.
If you knew how advanced technology would become, would you have made the same decision?
Good question. I'm pretty happy with my decisions, and I think I have no idea if I would have made the same decisions. I've kind of learned not to look back and reconsider these things that have happened in my life. I've been lucky. Some things I could have done that I would have led to more success, some things less. But you realize in the end, the journey that we're on is about the people you come in touch with. And so I would relive the same life I did.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
What's your opinion on Pokimane? She's my favorite streamer.
I love Pokey. And she keeps branching out. She was one of the first big female streamers. Now we have a bunch more that have broken out. As with so many streamers, the thing that you end up liking about them is you like who they are. And so I've met with Pokey a few times. She's thinking about where she's going, much like as I talk about her career, she's now thinking of branching out and doing fashion and doing a business and doing all sorts of things because she's someone who's smart, has a lot of interests. But it's been great hanging out when I get a chance to spend time with her.
Did you think that any of your previous jobs were going to be permanent? And when you had to switch from one of them, was there a gap in between them?
Yeah. When I left next door, I took a year off, spent time with the kids. It's funny, whenever I was in a job, I always felt like, oh, I'm going to keep doing this. And then I realized change was really valuable. And so, interestingly, when I look at my career, I think usually I stayed every place I've been 2 years longer than I should have. And where I've often learned the most is when I took on new opportunities. So.
What are your new thoughts on the new terms of service?
Okay, the audio broke up, I think, because the internet, my internet. Go ahead and ask the question again.
What are your thoughts on the new terms of service?
So there weren't that many changes that we made. So I don't know. Is there a particular change that you were thinking of when asking the question?
Just like the broad spectrum.
The whole process. Well, one of the biggest changes we made was we made it so that our streamers could simulcast so that they can stream on multiple platforms. And I'll take that as an example. It's a good thing to sort of, since I don't see anyone behind you, I suspect this may be the last question. And I know y'all have to get to your next period. One of the changes we made recently was we allowed streamers to stream simultaneously on Twitch and other platforms. And there was a lot of fear in the organization about this change. And in fact, the way the company used to work was they always focused on the competition and they focused on our market share and they focused on, how we compared to other people. And someone asked about the competition. And I think that was a mistake for Twitch. In general, if you're in a growing business, what you need to think about is how to grow the pie. And so we made a change that allowed our streamers to stream on Twitch and other platforms. And I think in the long run, it's going to be good for Twitch for those people that do it because they're trying to grow their audience. And I think this was one of those things where we limited their ability to do whatever they wanted to do. And my view is we need to allow the streamers to make those choices. So far, I've gotten great feedback about that. Somebody asked about streaming. One thing you can do is, if you have a TikTok following, stream on TikTok and Twitch at the same time. Sometimes you might be discovered that way. So I think a lot of our changes is trying to give more flexibility and freedom to our streamers, and I think that's gone really well. All right. It looks like we're wrapping up, and y'all need to get going. So thanks for being here. Feel free to come into my stream and say hi if you see I'm streaming. I might be streaming tonight. I'm not sure. But I'll be streaming next Wednesday. I stream every Wednesday, usually at 7. Tonight, I may not stream 7 my time, which is 9 your time. feel free and say, hey, I go to Jesuit, and you can ask any of the questions you didn't ask here.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Everybody, big round of applause.